Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our Psalm 144 Bible study after we took a couple days off. I haven't been feeling too great, and I have been working on some visa and residency things, so that's what I've been up to. But we're back, Psalm 144. Let's finish off strong on these last 7 Psalms or so. It's a total of 150. If you want the free PDF, you can download it on our website at tobelikechrist.com. Psalm 144 was once again written by David. I think that's number 5 in his streak. No New Testament references today. Our themes today: God's strength is a fortress for the righteous, and it is the fear of the wicked. And we're also going to read about David asking God to bless the nation of Israel. We do have one term to try to define here, and it's the term many waters. This is used a couple different ways in the Bible. You see it pop up somewhat often. We've already seen it in the Psalms. In this chapter, it's in verse 7. So a person that's surrounded by many waters, especially if those waters are tumultuous, they're in a dangerous position, right? And so David used this term to talk about how he was surrounded by danger. His enemies were like the waves on the open sea, threatening to drag him under. You can see Psalm 18, verses 16 through 17 for similar usage. As we look at our outline today, we've got 15 verses total to break down. I've broken them down into 2 sections. Let's take a look at the first one. It's verses 1 through 11. God, David's strength and fortress. So David was a king, yes, but he was also a military man. And he credits God in this psalm for keeping him alive and giving him the skills that he's had on the battlefield and giving him the victories that he's been able to enjoy. He was amazed that God took care of him because although he was a king, he was significant in his own nation. He knew that he was nothing in comparison to the great, eternal king who is God. He wrote this. This is a statement that we've seen, very similar statement in a previous psalm. Quote, "O Lord, what is man that you regard him, or the son of man that you think of him? Man is like a breath. His days are like a passing shadow." Verses 3 and 4. With some very illustrative language, David asks for God's power to be displayed against his enemies. He asks God to touch the mountains and to make them smoke. Now, that seems like a strange statement unless you know some of the history of the nation of Israel. When Moses was at Mount Sinai in Exodus chapter 19, it talks about the mountains smoking because God's presence and power was there. So that's probably what David is referring back to here. He asked the Lord to send out lightnings and arrows to scatter his enemies. David said that he needed a rescue from his adversaries. These were cruel and dishonest men, and they surrounded him like many waters. The final 4 verses, verses 12 through 15, I've titled, David Asks for God's Blessing Over His People. David asks for God to make Israel's sons like strong, full-grown plants. He has to make her daughters like beautiful pillars of a palace. He prayed that their granaries, that his nation, their granaries would be full of food, that their sheep would produce lambs and that they would fill their fields, that their cattle would be fertile, and that their streets would be safe from violence. The psalm ends with these words in verse 15, quote, "Blessed are the people to whom such blessings fall. Blessed are the people whose God is the Lord." That is Psalm 144. Now let's take a look at our application for today. Why shouldn't we just avoid the needs that we see in the world? Isn't it easier just to kind of go through life minding your own business and not getting too involved with other people and their problems? I think the answer to that is yeah, it is easier, but it's not godlike. We shouldn't forget that God doesn't have to care about us. God doesn't have to save us. He doesn't owe us anything. And David acknowledged this when he wrote, "O Lord, what is man that you regard him, or the son of man that you think of him?" David's amazed that God even thinks about us, that he even cares about us. God didn't look down at our needs and say, well, I'm just going to mind my own business. I'm not going to help them with their problems because they don't involve me and those are their issues to sort out. Sometimes, as Christians, we ought to serve others and help them fix their problems because that is what God did for us. A Christian who isn't a servant to others needs to take another look at the one who is a servant to them.